Welcome to Who Framed James. My name is James Byrd, and I'm a criminal defendant charged with firearms and drug charges in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania. On February 23rd, 2015, I was arrested by McKeesport, Pennsylvania police and charged with possession of a firearm and possession of narcotics with intent to deliver. Because of public corruption in my case, me being held illegally, and other misconducts committed by the prosecutor, which is now a record in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, I elected to represent myself in the case. While representing myself in the case, I obtained affidavits from the responsible party with regards to the firearm and was scheduled to put forth evidence on trial. I went to trial November 28th of 16, wherein I represented myself before Donna Jo McDaniel, a former Allegheny County judge. While doing so, I presented a witness named Christian Rash. Mr. Rash was present on February 23rd when I was arrested in McKeesport, Pennsylvania. Mr. Rash provided testimony taking responsibility for his firearm, and I took responsibility for my drugs. Prior to trial, I received an affidavit from Mr. Rash. The affidavit stipulated the following facts. Statement of witness. The following statement is intended to become a permanent part of the public record, to be referred to and serve as undisputed evidence in the event of witness unavailability in future legal proceedings. I, Christian Rash, being first duly sworn, depose, say, and declare by my signature that the following facts are true to the best of my knowledge, belief, and understanding, and being competent to testify to the same will do, to wit. On February 23rd, 2015, I did own and possess a black .40 caliber pistol, which I left under the seat covering on the driver's side of a silver Ford F-150 while in McKeesport, Pennsylvania with my friend Tariq. I was driving the truck that day, and upon reaching one of the destinations we were traveling at the time, I exited the vehicle to urinate between two local properties. Upon seeing police, I fled the scene on foot, leaving my gun behind inside the truck. Tariq Byrd was a passenger in the Ford F-150 on this particular day. I never told Byrd I had the gun on me, and to the best of my knowledge, Byrd did not become aware that I had my gun on me. I didn't want him to know because I was aware that Byrd had recently been released from prison, and I did not want him to be scared to let me drive the truck or act nervous if we come across police. When I got out of the truck, I discreetly placed the gun under the seat covering so that it was not in my way while I urinated outside. Byrd was busy arguing and texting some female and getting high to notice me hiding my pistol. On or about November 30th, 2016, I was called to testify as to my ownership and possession of the .40 caliber. During the trial of Tariq Byrd, I testified and told them what I am saying now, that the gun was mine and I did not want an innocent man to go to prison for my gun, which he knew nothing about. Due to the DA doing something illegal, the trial ended in a mistrial and the charges were thrown out against Byrd anyway. Now the federal government has picked up case and people want me to come back to court and testify all over again. But to keep it real, I'm not going to come to court and do that. The DA and ATF and whoever else have already done all kinds of foul, corrupt stuff in this case to keep Byrd locked up for a gun that is not his. They even threatened one of Byrd's witnesses and her family. So I can only imagine what they are capable of, and I fear retaliation if I come to court again. I already heard rumor that the police were trying to fix my current legal situation because of my involvement in Byrd's case. I have a family to worry about, And at the end of the day, I simply can't risk being set up or having them targeted because the government wants to convict Byrd at any cost and they feel like I'm in the way of them doing so. I do not want Byrd to go to prison for my gun, but if I have to come back to court in order to make sure he doesn't, then he has to go to prison because I know the federal government is going to come after me if I do come back. So I just can't do that. I'm sorry, but my own case is about to go to trial and I can't afford to make any more enemies. End of statement. Signed, Christian Rash. Acknowledgement, State of Pennsylvania, County of Allegheny. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a 4-page affidavit. It's dated April 5th, 2018, and is notarized on April 6th, 2018. Now, with that being read and said, it's clear and evident that Mr. Rash took responsibility for his own firearm. However, following the jury trial in which the DA was disqualified for prosecutorial misconduct, he was disciplined and demoted by the Allegheny County District Attorney's Office to doing preliminary hearings in the Mon Valley area, which is also McKeesport, Pennsylvania, Braddock, Pennsylvania, Homestead, Pennsylvania, and the Mon Valley area, different municipalities within that area. The federal government, Larry Sachs, the district attorney involved in the case, contacted the federal government's district attorney. He's the AUSA, Assistant U.S. Attorney, Brendan Conway, and requested that he pick up the case and charge me federally so that they can have a second chance to try to prosecute me for the same case. Mr. Rash also talked to an investigator named Malika Bokatic. It's spelled M-I-L-I-C-A, last name Bokatic, B-O-G-E-T-I-C. And she was an investigator who worked for Assistant Federal Public Defender Samantha Stern. I want to read to the public a report authored by Ms. Bokatic, and it states the following. On Friday, June 22nd, 2018, I visited the Allegheny County Jail at approximately 2:15 p.m. After going through security and reaching the 6th floor, I requested to meet with Mr. Christian Rash. I met with Mr. Rash on 6D at approximately 2:50 p.m. I identified myself as Malika Bokatic, an investigator working with Samantha Stern at the Federal Public Defender on Mr. Byrd's case. I explained to Mr. Rash the purpose of this visit was to learn about the circumstances of him testifying at the grand jury on Mr. Byrd's case. Mr. Rash agreed to speak with me. From that interview, I learned the following. Mr. Rash was transported from the ACJ to the federal courthouse not knowing for what purpose. The same day Mr. Rash was transported to the federal courthouse, he was brought to the marshals on the 2nd floor. At the marshals, he spoke with 2 men, 1 prosecutor, 1 agent, in one of the rooms for legal visits with a screen. At first, Mr. Rash recalled being asked an open-ended question when he tells his story of what happened the day Mr. Byrd was arrested. Mr. Rash explains to the prosecutor and agent the gun was his. After Mr. Rash explained the gun was his, he recalled the 2 men appeared frustrated. From that point on, the 2 men told Mr. Rash that he was lying. They also told Mr. Rash he could be penalized with charges such as perjury, as well as another charge Mr. Rash doesn't remember the name of, perhaps accessory. They also insinuated Mr. Rash's state case could be affected by him lying. They also insinuated that Mr. Rash was facing a lot of time on his state case and that in connection to this matter, they could penalize him with federal time. Mr. Rash felt scared and threatened during this encounter. Mr. Rash spoke with them for approximately a half hour or slightly less at the marshals. Mr. Rash was then transported to another floor and was put in a small room connected to a courtroom with the prosecutor and agent. There, the prosecutor and agent reiterated they didn't know why Mr. Rash was lying about the gun when Mr. Rash reiterated the gun was his. Mr. Rash believes he spent about 15 minutes in the small room connected to the courtroom/grand jury room with the prosecutor and agent. In the grand jury proceeding, Mr. Rash told his story, explained the gun was his, and he didn't believe Mr. Byrd should go down for something that wasn't his. Mr. Rash explained the prosecutor would ask questions as though he hadn't heard Mr. Rash explaining the gun was his, insinuating it was Mr. Byrd's. Mr. Rash believes he testified for about 30 minutes. Towards the end of the testimony, for about 3 minutes, Mr. Rash got frustrated with the prosecutor who kept insinuating Mr. Rash was being untruthful. For approximately the last 3 minutes of his testimony, Mr. Rash explained he was getting very frustrated with the prosecutor contradicting him, shrugged in a sarcastic manner, said, and I quote, "It was his gun," unquote, Mr. Byrd's, and contradicted his original testimony. Mr. Rash was never promised anything in exchange for his testimony. Mr. Rash reiterated he was threatened with perjury, another charge he doesn't recall, additional jail time, and was told he was jeopardizing his state case when Mr. Rash stated the gun was his own and not Mr. Byrd's. Mr. Rash was not asked if he wanted to consult with a lawyer. Since this encounter, Mr. Rash has not been approached by the FBI or the prosecutor regarding Mr. Byrd. I thank Mr. Rash for his time, and we parted ways at approximately 3:45 p.m. Malika Bokatek, June 25th, 2018. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on the record, for the record, this is Malika Bokatek's affidavit and statement. As you can see, it's a 2-page document. Currently, as of today's date, which is approximately December 5th, 2022, I have now been convicted in federal court for a gun that is not mine. In doing so, I was unlawfully prevented from putting forth evidence that exonerated me, evidence that was exculpatory in nature, as you can see. These two particular affidavits exonerate me with respect to the gun possession. However, the federal judge, her name is Kathy Bassoon, illegally forced me not to be able to represent myself because the prosecutor's office and former defense counsel knew of these two affidavits and did not want me to be able to put them forward and defend myself in order to exonerate me from the charge of the gun possession. Therefore, prior to trial, the federal judge made a bogus claim that I was somehow trying to be difficult or refusing to cooperate with court orders, knowing full well that the Allegheny County Jail was preventing me from communicating with the courts, sending mail out, or adequately representing myself for a number of years when I was held incarcerated in solitary confinement for close to 4 years straight, with no communication with the courts whatsoever via mail, and limited communication with anybody in the outside world via telephone. Defense counsel was put in place to represent me. His name was Damian R. Shore, and he refused to put forth any of the exculpatory evidence that I just read into the record for the world to see. Once he refused to put forth the evidence, he tried and attempted to proceed to jury selection in the case. Upon attempting to conduct a voir dire, there was an intermission held wherein the jury was excused, the jury selection pool was excused from the room. During that intermission in voir dire, I consulted with the attorney and explained that not only did I file a complaint against him for making racist comments to me previous about me acting like a nigger and being treated like one, I also explained to him that I didn't feel comfortable with him representing me after making such racist comments, and that I insisted that he put forth the evidence that proved my innocence. Mr. Shore refused to put forth the evidence, told me specifically that he felt like Mr. Rash was lying in the affidavits and that he wasn't putting forth the evidence. When I explained to him that it wasn't the province of a defense attorney to deny an opportunity to the jury to hear all of the evidence and make a full determination as to what the truth of the matter was, the attorney told me to take it up with the judge. He made his decision and he wasn't putting forth the evidence. At that time, I blacked out, got up out my seat, and slapped the shit out the attorney, and he fell out of his chair on the floor in the courtroom. Following me slapping the attorney, the U.S. Marshals pounced on me, took me downstairs to the holding cells, wherein ultimately, subsequent to the issue with slapping the attorney, I was forced to proceed to trial with the same attorney that was slapped representing me, and me being absent at trial and not allowed to participate. The only time that I was allowed to participate in the trial was to testify on my own behalf, wherein I was shackled up from head to toe, waist high, with a spit mask over my face, and in prison garb in front of an all-white jury, wherein I was ultimately convicted of the gun possession and drug possession and intent to deliver, wherein I had no fair chance to defend myself, with everybody knowing that there was evidence that exonerated me with respect to the gun possession. For America's information, I was willing to plead guilty to the drugs because I did have the drugs on my person. I possessed the drugs and I never denied that fact. However, I wasn't willing to let the United States government follow up on a sham legal process wherein I was already tried in the state court and exonerated on such charges, retried in the federal court as a sham legal process and continuation of the corruption that took place in Allegheny County, and forced to not be able to put forth critical evidence that proved my innocence. Once I was convicted, I am now faced with 360 months to a life sentence for gun possession that I never even possessed, and where there's evidence that exists that exonerates me from the gun possession itself. However, because I'm poor, disenfranchised, and don't have much support in the streets, I'm being forced to go back into a sentencing hearing and be sentenced to however amount of time that they want to give me for a crime that I'm not responsible for. You tell me, America, is this fair? Who framed James? Who's behind the well-oiled machine that conducted this type of behavioral conduct, which got me railroaded into an unfair trial based upon unfair evidence by a prosecutor who was doing a favor for a good friend of his who had already committed prosecutorial misconduct and caused the trial in the state court to be derailed intentionally to hinder my ability from seeing that trial through and getting a just verdict of not guilty on my behalf. I would like for America to judge these facts and decide what is going on. I would like for any attorneys pro bono in the world to get involved and look at the facts of my circumstances and see if I'm telling the truth or not. I'm not asking anybody to just take my word for it, ladies and gentlemen. I've just produced hard evidence that exonerates me, and it has never been put forth because attorneys refuse to put it forth, refuse to let me represent myself and put it forth, and I'm sitting in jail for a crime I didn't commit. I'm a firm believer in justice. Therefore, when you break a rule in society, I'm a firm believer that when you get caught breaking those rules, that society's norm is for you to pay a penalty or a consequence. I have absolutely no problem with paying a consequence for something that I did. I possess those drugs. And although drug use is not permitted in society and possession of drugs is not permitted in society, I still possess them because I had a drug addiction. However, I am not a drug dealer. I don't have a history of being a drug dealer, and I was not in possession of the .40 caliber Sig Sauer firearm that I'm now convicted of and charged and was charged with without any fair chance of presenting the evidence that exonerated me. Why am I here? I'll tell you why I'm here. Because America has perpetuated systemic racism within the criminal justice system, wherein the United States of America, in conjunction with Commonwealth states and several other states, knowingly, willingly, and intentionally cause innocent African Americans to be railroaded in a system that is unfair and unjust. And it's time that we stand up and do something about it. I might spend the rest of my life in jail behind something that I did not do, when in fact, I was willing to admit my guilt for what I did do. I've been incarcerated since 2015 in the county jail. It's almost 8 years now. I'm asking you, please, do the right thing, get involved, and hold those accountable who are responsible for the public corruption, the sham legal process, and the cover-up that took place to slander my name and cause me to be convicted for a crime I didn't commit. Thank you for listening, America. Thank you for judging the evidence. And I look forward to receiving justice soon. Please email me at justiceforjames@gmail.com. That's JUSTICE, the number 4, and the word James is spelled JAYMZ. You can also sign up on my GTL tablet so you can instant message me for more details of my circumstances and show your support by downloading the Getting Out app in your app store and using my booking number, which is 2015-06698. Thank you, and I'll see you next episode when I present more information and evidence that exonerates me and exposes the public corruption in Allegheny County from this jail cell of 103 inside the Allegheny County Jail. Thank you. God bless.